Michael Vick at BetUS.com. Catch an incredible 125% sign-up bonus on your first 3 deposits, plus 10% gambler's insurance. BetUS, my online sportsbook and casino.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome into a Football Friday edition of Birds 365. Johnny Mack and the Eagles, they end training camp, John, and you think you're about to get a little break or something, and boom, Howie Roseman makes a trade. Jahan Dotson is the newest Philadelphia Eagle. How you doing on this Football Friday, Johnny Mack?
Yeah, welcome, Jahan Dotson. So everybody's going to be fired up about that. We'll talk about that a lot. We did in emergency football 24/7. So a lot of people listen to that. Thank you for tuning into that, and more info from DC a little bit in their thought process, because that's where mine goes. It's like it looks good on paper, but when it looks good on paper, I tend to go the other direction, and I say, well, there's something got to be wrong from Washington's standpoint, because this doesn't make a lot of sense. And we'll see how it shakes out. But we'll talk a lot about Jahan Dotson, his fit here, which I think is better. I think that's the big thing. Like, he's the 16th overall pick there. He's not the 16th overall pick here.
Right.
And the fit is better here as a complementary player than what he was expected to become in Washington, which obviously he did not reach. So I think that's important. Very similar in a different way, but very similar to Saquon Barkley. As a foundational piece, no, not going to work. As a complementary piece, it might work very well. And that's sort of the position the Eagles are in.
No doubt about it. I want to welcome everybody in this morning. Remember, this show is brought to you today by BetUS. Thanks to our good people at BetUS for sponsoring Birds 365. More about them later on. Johnny Mack, you said something about, tapping into the reporters that have covered Dotson. We broke it down a little bit on the Football 24/7, the compensation, the trade. I'd like to do that all again here on Birds 365 for the different listening audience. So break us down on the trade, the details of the trade, your overall thoughts on it. I know you kind of just gave a short synopsis, but and then we'll get into what the comments came from the Commanders reporters that have been covering Dotson since his
Yeah, I mean, well, the trade is the Eagles get Dotson and a 5th-round pick in 2025 in exchange for a 3rd-round pick that year and 2 7th-round picks. So obviously the main consideration is the third. The Eagles have 2 3rd-round picks, had 2 3rd-round picks, their own and Miami's. This pick will be the better one of those. So, but, both teams are expected to be pretty good. Eagles and the Dolphins. Probably the Dolphins, I'm guessing, will not be quite as good as the Eagles. So it's probably going to end up being their 3rd-round pick. But that obviously that can go a lot of ways. And they have 4 7th-round picks, which is, you don't need 4. So no issues giving up some of them. Of those 4, they're giving up the 2 worst. So they're giving up the 3rd and 4th of those 7th-round picks. So that's sort of the trade parameters.
Not crazy from a compensation standpoint. I mean, that 3rd-round pick is high, but not a crazy package to get him.
No, not at all from a standpoint of a contending team. Certainly not. And,
right.
This was the number 16th overall pick, as I mentioned, in the 2022 draft. So it hasn't been a long ways. Now, I remember at the time when Washington selected him, that caught a lot of people by surprise that he went that high. So probably a little bit overdrafted, but nonetheless, he was considered to be a 1st-round pick, probably in the later 1st round by most people. And Washington, for whatever reason, liked it. And remember, they've shifted gears since then. Not only everything from the owner on down, is out. So that group that drafted Jahan Dotson is not there. You have Dan Quinn, you have Cliff Kingsbury, and you have Adam Peters, the new GM, who is already, he and Howie seem to be getting very close. Howie traded up with him to get Cooper DeJean in the second round, going up to 40. You remember everything. The team's putting out clips of the draft room and Howie trying to finagle the rookie GM for a later first round pick. And Adam Peters made a nice little quip at Howie. So it's going to be interesting, in the division. So that's where my mind goes immediately. Like, why is Washington giving up on him? Number one, and two, they're trading him in the division. Typically, you don't want to do that because last thing you want to do is trade a guy, and then he's going to come back and
right.
help you lose twice, and everybody's going to make a big deal out of it, and that can cost people their jobs. So, Adam Peters seems very secure in this decision, and we'll see how it works out. Again, I get why he's not a fit in Washington. I get why he could be a fit in Philadelphia, and that's the old. I think people assume, well, he's a good player here, he's going to be a good player there. Not necessarily. The Eagles are in a different spot than Washington, so it probably makes both. It probably makes sense from both perspectives. One thing, and I texted you as soon as we got off the air because somebody got back to me right as I got off the air with you.
Yeah, I was about to ask you that next. What did you hear from the guys down there?
Yeah, and one of the things that my source told me, and I got to pull it up. I don't want to misquote him, but one of the things that people kind of talked about, and even the Washington Post this morning when I saw their report about it, is talked about his play strength, and he's not very physical. So clearly that's the spin coming out of the Washington front office. The Post described it as on-field strength was a weakness. His inability to play through contact could essentially led the team to conclude that he was a bad fit for the vertical passing scheme run by Cliff Kingsbury. And the quote he got from a scout was, he's fluid and fast, but not sudden or strong. So evidently he's got some issues with press coverage and things of that, and getting off the line of scrimmage. And my source was a little bit crueler, I would say. His, complete total lack of physicality is number one. Soft and a bit mopey. But he did say he's a very good route runner.
Okay.
So he did
followed it up with, all right, he can run routes, but boy,
yeah, sort of like that. I would say it's a compliment sandwich, but he didn't give the compliment in the middle. He just went harsh and then said, yeah, but he's a good route runner. So
John, I gotta be honest, I hate those two adjectives, soft and mopey.
But we talk about Vic. A lot of people don't like Cliff Kingsbury, and there was a chance he's going to be there. So maybe he just didn't like Cliff Kingsbury, the new offensive coordinator there, who the Eagles interviewed to be the offensive coordinator here before they hired Kellen Moore. And some people believe they would have hired him, but he wanted a little bit more autonomy than they were willing to give up as far as coaching staff and things of that nature. So I don't know if that's the case, or they would have hired him, but it was pretty much off the rails. He's the first guy they interviewed, and it pretty much went off the board quickly because he wanted too much autonomy. And I think that's a good thing from the Eagles' perspective, because I'm not. He rubs people the wrong way. And maybe you just rubbed him the wrong way. Not everybody, but some people.
Yeah, no. Ian says you'd be mopey too, having to catch balls from Sam Howell. Okay, not a bad point there from Ian. John, 2 super chats I want to hit on, and then I got a question to follow up.
Don't say that to Ed Kracz. He's going to be on the show. He's a big Sam Howell guy.
That is true. Ed Kracz loves Sam Howell. Rashid Mixon, what's up, Rashid? Good morning, brother. Good morning to everybody in the chat. By the way, hit that like button. We'll be covering this all day long. We have a great show planned for everybody. Rashid says, good trade by Eagles. He averaged 500-plus yards, exactly what we need from him. Plus, we have him for 2 years, so our receivers should be intact for a while. Agreed with Rashid. I think that's the
come on, benefit of it. Rashid, not a vacuum, man. He caught 500 yards in an offense where he's supposed to be the number 2. That ain't good. That's like Devontae catching 500 here. Yeah, that ain't good. And
they gave up on him quick, man. That's a first-round draft pick you give up on after 2 years.
Now as a third, again, the fit's better here. There's not expected to do as much.
Right.
So the fit's better, but you can't just say, oh, you got 500 there. We could place that in 500 here. No, he's not going to get as many opportunities. He's not going to be looked at as much. And the key with that third receiver spot, and we've been talking about it for all, you're not getting a lot of traffic. So here in Philadelphia. So, when the ball comes your way, make the play. That's what Quez Watkins was unable to do late in his career here. And I think Dotson will be able to do that. So I think it's a significant upgrade.
Yeah, it's an upgrade, but it's not this perfect thing that puts us over the top. I think that's where people are going a little haywire on it. I like the player. I don't love the player. I think it's an upgrade from what we had, but I don't know. We'll see. Prince Swayze says, it seems that many are underestimating the significance of this move. We now have a player who can create space, make catches, and run routes. John, what do you have to say to Prince?
Yeah, I mean, he's athletic. And as he said, he's a good route runner. Now, people have the book on him, and if that's the book on him, and he has trouble getting all press coverage, they're probably going to try to press him. They're going to try to make him play through contact. He's not a contested catch guy, not a physical guy. So we'll see how it shakes out. But it was a tremendous weakness for this team, not only wide receiver 3, but to me, as I've stated pretty consistently, the backup, if in case AJ or Devontae sprained an ankle, was my even bigger concern and had to miss a game or 2. Now the Eagles are much more equipped to handle that. Now that doesn't mean if that happens and he's got to play 70 snaps, he's going to play like they play, because that's not true.
That's not happening.
But I'm saying you're much better equipped to persevere in that type of situation. And this guy can make some plays, and you didn't have that player on the roster before. So unquestionably, it's a good move for Philadelphia because of the role, and we'll see how he embraces it. I've never met the kid. Maybe it's just he didn't like Cliff Kingsbury. Maybe the new a lot of people need a change of scenery. Maybe it sparks him, and maybe he gets better being the complementary piece instead of the expectations of being the number 16th overall pick. Well, he ain't the 16th pick in Philadelphia. He's the 16th pick in Washington. So you saw this when you went through things with Jalen Reagor and Nelson Aguilar. The expectations of being that first-round pick and a pretty high first-round pick are enormous. And you can go somewhere else, and they don't exist, those expectations. And things become a little bit easier. So, yeah, I like the fit from the Eagles standpoint. I think I will say it a million times. I've said it a million times. I'll say it a million more. It's not a vacuum. He's probably not a good fit in Washington. He isn't a good fit in Washington. He looks like a very good fit in Philadelphia.
Agreed.
They're not the same situations.
A couple more super chats here, John, I want to get to because we got Damo coming up. Everybody's been showing a lot of love this morning. Appreciate everybody in the chat. Prince dropped another one. He said, blitzing the Eagles will come at a cost. Additionally, this lineup no longer has a weak link, making it challenging for opposing teams to defend. I think that is a good point there, John. Quick response to Prince. I got 2 more super chats I got to get to.
Well, blitzing the Eagles already should have been a problem with A.J. Brown, and it wasn't. So that has more to do with other aspects than the receivers. That has to do with teaching during the week, everybody being on the same page, identifying the blitz, and going to the right answer for the blitz. That really doesn't have to do with, other than the receivers have to be on the same page as the quarterback. So there's a preparation aspect to it. But you should have done, you know, the Eagles should be good against the blitz because of the presence of A.J. Brown, period. And they weren't at the end of last year. So that involves way more than just having a bunch of skilled and athletic receivers, because they should have already been good at it.
Good comment here from Brian Fleming. Brian, thank you, man. $20 super chat. We appreciate that. Appreciate the support of the show. As always, Brian says, diving deeper on this Dotson move, it was done to limit blitzes on Hurts and basically mandates zones because cover 0 man against all these weapons won't work. Plus, their CB1 problem won't travel with Kellen's motion. Good luck. It's a good point.
Yeah, this is the NFL. And until the Eagles prove they can handle the blitz, they're going to get blitzed, period. Now, if it works the way Brian says it, yeah, people will stop blitzing.
Right.
But they got to prove it. Nobody's going to say, oh, the Eagles fell apart against the blitz, but now they have Jahan Dotson. We're afraid to play cover 0. Well, the weakness to his game, in theory, is press coverage. So you just press him at the line. He's, you know, boom. Timing of the play is probably gone.
That happened in the slot, though, John? A lot. I mean,
yeah, you can press. You can press anywhere.
Right.
So, you know, until the Eagles prove they can handle the blitz, they're getting blitzes. Now, if it works out, yeah, people will back off and they'll play a ton of zone. And they probably will play their safeties in the parking lot, which creates another problem. Then you have to be disciplined, and then you have to be patient, and then you have to be willing to dink it and dunk it down the field. So, but because of what happened at the end of last year, at least early, teams will be blitzing the Eagles until they prove that they can handle it.
No doubt. Cody Stacy checks in. Having him means defenses have to account for him. This move puts the offense over the top simply because of the matchup nightmares. Yeah, John, you've already talked a little bit about that. It's definitely a matchup concern for any opposing defense. But what's your response to Cody? Cody, thanks for the super chat, man.
Well, the Eagles already had, you know, it's nice, as I said, more for the depth, and it's not going to be a high traffic position from a volume standpoint. They already had they before Jahan Dotson ever steps in the building, they already were a matchup nightmare for every defense with AJ, Devontae, Dallas, and Saquon. They were already a matchup nightmare. So, yeah, I don't think this puts them over the top. I mean, everybody was expecting them to be the number 1 offense before he got there. So, does it make a little bit better? Yes. Does it make it more likely to hit that ceiling? Yes. But, you know, it was already, I was talking with Mike Gill yesterday on his show before, actually it was after. So it was after, but I after the trade, but they were already, I mentioned that they were already a matchup nightmare. You know, defensive coordinators aren't sleeping the night before playing this team, whether they have Jahan Dotson or not, but it does make them more likely to hit that ceiling.
No doubt. That's a good take there, John. Let's get to our first commercial break. We have Paul Domowitch waiting in the green room, ready to talk to Damo. Coming up next here on Birds 365. Damo, sorry for making you wait. Appreciate your patience. Before we get to our first commercial break, I'm going to tell everybody about our sponsor, BetUS. By the way, you were all great in the first segment. I appreciate that, John. Great stuff as well. BetUS, everybody. Are you looking for a new book this football season? BetUS is the answer, and JAKIB Sports is proud to announce our new partnership for the upcoming season. Right now, everybody, click the link in the description and receive a 125% sign-up bonus up to $2,000 on your first 3 deposits. If it's good for former Birds quarterback Michael Vick, it's definitely good for JAKIB Sports. BetUS has the fastest payouts in the industry. They have 24/7 personalized service, 365 days of the year, and it's fast and easy to deposit and withdraw. So go to betus.com.pa. That's betus.com.pa. The link is down in the description. Tell them JAKIB Sports sent you. Thanks, everybody. We'll be back in 3 minutes with Paul Domowitch here on Birds 365.
Michael Vick at BetUS.com. Catch an incredible 125% sign-up bonus on your first 3 deposits, plus 10% gambler's insurance. BetUS, my online sports book and casino.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.
Is the best vacation one that you find, or one you get lost in? One that takes you to new heights, or reminds you to go with the flow? To get your feet wet and your wheels spinning? One that lets you find your own rhythm, or get carried away? Find the best of yourself. Get lost in the woods. Plan your stay in the Wildwoods today.
Win and save this baseball season from Colony Pools and Power Washing, a local company serving Delaware, Delco, and Chester County since 1970. Are you tired of looking at your green house? Is your roof, siding, deck stained green from algae and mold? Let the experts pressure wash your home and take the pressure off of you. Win with Colony Pools and Power Washing. Call them now at 302-762-2250. That's 302-762-2250.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction. Go with trust.
Go Birds!
And go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Up. And go Birds.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
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 Welcome back in, everybody, to Football Friday here on Birds 365, August 23rd edition. Joined now by Paul Domowitch. Domo, welcome to the show, man. Appreciate you being here. Hall of Fame selector, one of the best in the business. Been doing it a long time. Welcome to the show, Domo. How you doing?
Doing well, guys. How about you?
Good, Domo. So I you've been doing this a long time, and I want to sort of poke into your mind and how it works when you see these kind of deals. Because when I say it, I start thinking about the other side. I say, why? Why is Washington giving up on the 16th overall pick from 2022 with 2 years left on this deal? And they're trading him in the division. So I ask you, is that how your mind works? And do you go to the why?
Absolutely. I mean, especially, A lot of deals for first round picks occur late in the contract. When you have either decided you're not going to re-sign them, or you don't want to go into the option year with them, and so you're willing to get rid of them. But this is a deal. They're getting rid of the 16th pick in the 2022 draft. 2 years into his contract. So yeah, that is a question to ask, is why. I mean, clearly they don't have the same high regard for him right now as Howie. Howie's in a different situation than Washington is right now. He's clearly made it clear they're going for it this year. Given a third round pick for a guy that's, going to be your number 3 receiver optimistically, that's a lot. He better be right.
Agreed, Dama. What do you think his impact will be on this team? You probably, I think you were in the green room. You saw some of those super chats, people talking about the blitzes and what it can do for this offense. What's your perspective on what a guy like that can do for the offense? I know he was disappointing in Washington, but as John pointed out, he's wide receiver 3 here. He's not the 16th overall draft pick. What's your expectation for what he will do for this offense?
I'm going to be interested to see how they use him. I mean, he's going to be the 3rd wide receiver, but where you line him up? He's not, his best spot is not the slot. I mean, he's not a guy who's good in crowds and press coverage. My guess is we're going to see a lot more of A.J. Brown inside than this kid. That they'll end up with him on the outside once the motion, once they go through all the motion, pre-snap motion. And I think A.J. Brown may be the guy that, John talked earlier about, it's all about beating the blitz. And who would you rather be dumping it off to in situations like that, A.J. Brown or Dotson? So, I think we're going to see a lot more of this kid on the outside than we are, the standard slot position. So, will he? He's good. I don't think they got so many weapons, Zander. This guy's not going to get a lot of
football.
Yeah, you want to get the ball to Goddard more. You want to make sure that Brown and Smith are fed. You've got running backs now that you theoretically are putting into the passing game a lot more than the previous offensive coordinator. There's only so much this guy can is going to get the ball. So,
well, just a quick follow up. It is interesting what you point out, though. Maybe it's as simple as it opens up Kellen Moore to be able to move Devontae and AJ around more, because now you have a guy that can play on the outside. That's a good take. And then Joe Johnson checks in with a super chat. He says, I think this is more about losing AJ to injury in the playoffs. I think that's probably more the line of thinking here. John's been talking about that all off season with,
Yeah, they needed a backup outside, Damo, more than they needed a third receiver because of the traffic, AJ. But while I say that, if they lose A.J. Brown, they're screwed anyway.
Agreed.
You don't replace players like that. But if you do lose them in season for a week or two, sprained ankle, something like that, then you're better equipped to deal with it and at least persevere. But to Zander's point, Kellen wants to move around Devontae and A.J. a lot, much more than before in the static. So they'll be in the slot. And I think Devontae has been the one in practice more in the slot. So I'm interested to see how that works out. And Dotson, you're right. He played about, and I looked it up yesterday, Damo, he played over 900 snaps, so significant number. 500 plus were outside, about 350 were inside. So he can do both. But the one thing I contacted a Washington guy. I saw the post reports, and you can see they criticized his play strength. He's not very physical. That's what Washington's thinking. He's not going to get off press coverage. He's not going to play. He's not going to be a contested catch guy. So there are some holes in this game, obviously, but as the third with those two guys, I think it's pretty good.
Yeah, and another thing is, you're right about, press coverage is his weakness, but when you've got a quarterback like Jalen, teams can't play a lot of man against him. I mean, they've got to play more zone than man.
Yeah, they do.
If you turn their back to him, he's gone. So that makes this a better situation for a guy who maybe is a better zone player than a man receiver. So that helps him. I think he's in a better spot. And like you said, they're not asking him to do what he had to do in Washington. The difference
but
is,
here's
though.
So a lot of people asked about the blitz and about affecting the blitz.
Mm-hmm.
If it's 3rd and 10 coming off last season, people are blitzing the Eagles. I mean, until they prove they can deal with it, they're blitzing the Eagles. So in that specific instance, maybe you're right. Typically zone, you don't want to turn your back on Jalen. But I think in the 3rd and long situations, they're going to have to prove that they can handle the blitz before it stops.
Yeah. It's all on Jalen.
Yeah. And that's what we had. One super chatter who said he's going to make it. It's about the quarterback. Let's be honest. The receivers have to be on the same page, but it's about the quarterback recognizing it and going to the right spot. And there's a lot of chemistry involved with that. But yeah, Jahan Dotson's not changing. They should have already dominated. That was my point. They should have already dominated against the blitz, and they didn't.
Yeah.
I'll ask both of you guys because I was thinking about this. Go ahead, Emma.
Oh, I was just going to say. I mean, the question last year was who was to blame for that? The coaching or Jalen for their problems with the blitz down the stretch.
Well, I think it's half and half. I think it's, as always, it's a little bit of both. But from the coaching perspective, I think it's more about the preparation during the week to get them comfortable with going to the right answers. So I think that's where you criticize the coaches. But the quarterback, man, like one of the funniest things to me, Damo, is, people thinking you call hot routes. Hey, we're going to, Brian Johnson's on the sideline calling the hot route. It doesn't work like that. That's the quarterback has to identify it and go to it. It's in the offense, but you have to be able to be prepared to utilize it. And the Eagles weren't last year. So until they prove they can do it, it's coming.
Yeah. Yeah,
we're probably coming tomorrow in a preseason game with Brian Flores.
Will Dotson play in that preseason game, John, you think?
No.
He's got stuff to do before that, right?
Yeah. I don't think anybody's playing.
There'll be a lot of guys on the sideline tomorrow with T-shirts on.
Yeah. I got a question for both you guys, and I want to ask it. I want to thank Ian East for becoming a channel member. Ian, you're officially entered into our Saquon Barkley jersey giveaway. Thank you for supporting the channel, my friend. We appreciate that very much. So, guys, this team just traded away a first-round draft pick they took, 16th overall, just 2 seasons ago. Who's counting? But the Philadelphia Eagles hung on to Jalen Reagor longer than that. They hung on to J.J. Arcega-Whiteside longer than that. That's a quick turnaround on a first-round draft pick. And the guy who's behind him in Washington is none other than Olamide Zaccheaus, the guy the Philadelphia Eagles just let walk out the room. Now, maybe the Commanders are thinking, oh, we'll get these picks, we'll package a trade, and we'll try and go get Brandon Ayuk. Maybe that's a possibility. But did they really just trade us this guy to replace the guy we already had on our roster? I mean, is that a cause for concern for either of you guys?
Not from my perspective. Washington, remember, Adam Peters, Dan Quinn, and Cliff Kingsbury didn't draft him. So they don't care about that. And they don't like the player, evidently. Completely different regime. Yeah.
And these are two different teams. They're at different stages of their development. The Eagles are ready to, they feel they're ready to compete for a championship this year. They want a guy that can help them right away. The Washington's looking, wow, we just got a 3rd round pick for a guy that, might have been okay. But for them, they needed to look, they were looking at the future more than they were, how this guy was going to play this year as their 3rd wide receiver.
The division part of it, though, to me is interesting, Damo, because, if they traded him anywhere outside, I would have, all right, they don't like the player. No big deal. You move on. As you said, they're in the rebuilding mode. Get a draft pick, a premium pick makes sense. To trade him in the division, that comes with a little bit of danger. If he shows it, you're not going to look good if you're Adam Peters and he's beating you. That's not going to look good. And you know how quick things move now in the NFL. You get a little bit of a honeymoon period, but not much. If things aren't going in a good direction. Now, to Zander's point, Brandon Ayuk evidently really wants to play with Jaden Daniels. So if they can pull that off, then nobody's talking about Jahan Dotson in DC.
Right.
Also, I don't think there were any other teams out there that were willing to give a third-round pick for this guy. I mean, my guess is Adam Peters said, "Okay, we'll do that."
Yeah, people don't realize how that you depreciate. This is like a car, man. As soon as it goes off the lot, man, it depreciates quickly. You're probably right. Yeah, it is a lot. It is a lot. But it speaks to, I think that's a positive for Eagles fans in that the Eagles not only believe that the Super Bowl window is open, they believe it's really accessible to get in that window. And they're going for it. So that's always a positive if you're a fan.
Yeah. For years, when Andy was here, their approach, with a few exceptions, was kind of like, okay, we're willing to gamble sometimes, but what we want to do is just stay in the hunt every year, and things break our way, and maybe we, win the Super Bowl. That, with the exception of the when they got T.O., that's kind of the conservative way they approach things, and it worked. It kept them in the hunt every year. I mean, their playoff record, as far as making the playoffs back then and making the conference championship, was amazing. But now, I mean, Howie's a different animal. I mean, Howie's knows you don't get that many chances. If you've got the other pieces, some of them are older. You don't know how many more years Lane Johnson's playing. I mean, I know he says he's going to play till 40, but so, I mean, when you get a chance where you think this guy can be the final piece to the puzzle, you're willing to take it.
Yeah. And I don't disagree. I like Andy's method, though. I that's what I would want. I want to be consistently good, and then eventually the stars are going to align, because so many things have to go right to win a Super Bowl. And it could be, you could be the best team and you get the wrong injury in the NFC Championship game and the whole thing blows up.
Well, the difference between Andy and Joe Banner's era and now is, I mean, you had to manage the cap back then. Now you really don't. I mean, the money they are getting every year that's causing the cap to keep jumping. I mean, unless you're just plain stupid, you're always going to have money. And so I think Howie's approach is, we'll always be able to, we'll always have enough cap room to go out and get more free agents if this thing blows up on us. And I mean, you still need to build through the draft when you got a quarterback. But even their quarterback doesn't have a high cap number. I mean, they signed this guy to a $50+ million deal and have done put together an amazing deal where I don't think it goes above 21 million for another 2 years yet.
Yeah, I think the Carson Wentz situation, the silver lining to that was it proved to the Eagles, all right, I mean, that's the worst case scenario. The quarterback blows up on you. And at the time, that was a big contract. It's gotten so much smaller over time. And I remember Jody and I would talk to Andrew Brandt all the time, and I would talk to Andrew all the time about it. He's like, "There's no way they're taking on this dead money hit." This is Andrew Brandt, so I'm firmly in Andrew's camp. I'm like, I agree with Andrew. Nobody's ever done this in the history of the NFL. Now it looks laughable. Everybody takes on. The Eagles did it first. And it wasn't a big deal. They took a little bit of a step back and then bang, they were right back in the mix. So I think that proved to them you can take gambles and you can recover quickly even if it doesn't work out. And I think they're right. But I think Jeffrey's a big part of that, because a lot of owners will not let their GMs do that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
pay out dead money and all that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
or have that on the books. Money's already paid, but have that on the books. So Jeffrey's a big part of this. He really is. He deserves some credit as well.
And so does the job security of Howie, I would say too. Well,
that's Jeffrey too, though.
Yeah, agreed.
Because he's willing to allow him to make mistakes, because human beings make mistakes. The assumption that nobody's going to make mistakes is incorrect. So I always think continuity is better. You've seen both over the years, Damo. I mean, it can be boring at times, but the teams with continuity, Pittsburgh being the best example, probably, that's a hell of a lot better than the alternative. And everybody's impatient now. Everybody.
I think Howie's, the new breed of GMs. I mean, Howie has always been criticized for not having a football background. Started as a cap guy with this team. Yeah. Now he has an understanding of both sides of it. I mean, he understands the cap better than almost everybody in this league. And he's also turned into a pretty good personnel guy. So, every move he makes, he understands both sides of it, the talent issue and the cap ramifications.
Yeah, and this is a good move. I think overall, Jahan Dotson, I think it makes sense for the Eagles, and it probably didn't make sense for Washington. So that's another one. Maybe it works out for both sides long term, hopefully. But different situation. Overall, we look at this training camp, Damo, and say, wow, it was a really sharp summer for Jalen Hurts. He seems, which is, tells you what the spring means, because this team looked like a disaster offensively in the spring, playing in T-shirts and shorts. And all of a sudden, they're not throwing interceptions. He finally threw one. It's been pretty impressive. And I think Vic has gotten the defense to the point we all thought he would get it to. And that's at least serviceable. At least it's going to be middle of the road. It's not going to be a disaster like it was last year. So how close do you think this team is to say, yeah, we're going to be one of the few teams really in the mix to go to the Super Bowl?
Yeah. No, I right now, they clearly, in my mind, are one of the four best teams in the conference. Probably one of the two best. It's just a matter, it's August right now. I mean, how healthy will they be, and will every other team be in December and January, which is when it counts?
Yeah. I got to ask a question here about back to the trade a little bit. So they make a trade for an offensive guy, wide receiver 3. John and I talked about it all offseason. They needed to upgrade that position. It was a seismic drop after 1 and 2. And I know there's context, and maybe not every move was available, but in a vacuum, was it dumb to trade for another offensive piece when your defense has far more questions and hurt you far more down the stretch last year? Does that make sense what I'm saying? Can it be looked at like that?
I mean, I think ever since they decided Jalen Hurts was going to be their starting quarterback going forward, they have their whole focus has been to surround him with as much talent as they could collect, to give him no excuse for failure. And they've done it. I mean, it's a pretty damn good offense. I mean, one of the best lines in the league. You've got just a plethora of people for him to throw to. I mean, there are no excuses this year for Jalen, assuming everybody stays healthy. Defensively, they went out and got people in the offseason. I think if there was a piece, if they felt right now that they needed a piece, like they felt they needed one more receiver, they would have done it. Maybe they still will. I don't know, but I can't think of they haven't. There have been some edge rushers that have been available that, some big time guys that they didn't really make a play for. I'm talking about people like Judon and I mean, they just don't feel that they apparently clearly feel they're okay with the group they've got. They like, they must think Nolan Smith is going to develop into a hell of a player. Their linebackers are deep now. Their corners are deep. and safety is okay. Which is
I
why
don't
they've
think
got.
I didn't think I'd sorry to interrupt you, Damo. I didn't think I'd ever hear the sentence the linebackers are deep in
Yeah,
Philadelphia anymore in the
yeah,
modern era. But you're right. I've said that too. I've always been like, I'm not worried about the Eagles' depth at linebacker. I'm worried about the starters.
right.
I think they got a bunch of good back linebackers, and I don't know if they have starters.
Yeah,
But I do think Nakobe Dean is ready to turn the corner. I think
yeah,
he's looked really good over the past week or two, and we'll see if they pull the trigger. I hope they pull the trigger
yeah,
on that. But the depth, I'm not concerned about at all. It's weird.
yeah.
I think
Well,
they're good.
I think one of the reasons why, John, is, I mean, I don't think anybody looked at when they brought in Zach Bond. Nobody kind of looked at him as a off-ball linebacker. They thought he's
Even Howie, by the way. Howie's the one who told us basically this is Andrew Van Ginkel in Vic's scheme. And then Vic got here and said, no, I'm going to play him off ball.
Yeah. Well, that's what I like about this linebacking core. They've got four guys that can go after the quarterback. I mean, aside from how they cover, I mean, and I think they'll be fine there. You go back. I mean, Jeremiah Trotter, Dean, Bond, Devin White. I mean, it's gonna be fun watching Vic have these guys blitzing. I mean, he's never been historically a big blitzer. I don't think that's going to change terribly, but he's also going to cater to who he has, and he's got a very good blitzing linebacking core, and I think he's going to keep people on off of
Yeah. I think he's going to be great on third downs. He's very good situationally. He he's very plain. He's very honest about the blitz. He boils it down to, I'm like, yeah, that's right. And he said, you blitz. If you blitz when you want to, you're going to have success. If you blitz when you have to, you feel you have to, it ain't going to work.
Yeah. Hey, 65 years old is not too late to become Wink Martindale, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think people are hoping for that. I don't think that's happening, but I do think he will be very good situationally. And if it's 3rd and 13 against a young quarterback like Jaden Daniels, you're going to see the blitz.
Oh yeah.
And I think he's very smart that. Whereas if he's playing, there's fewer and fewer of these quarterbacks. I saw Aaron Rodgers destroyed the New York Giants in one practice that thinks they want to jump off the bridge. Luckily, the Jets aren't on the schedule. Against him, he's probably not blitzing. So it's going to be a give and take each and every week with Vic Fangio, and that's a good thing. You should change from week to week. He's a good coach, Damo. You know that. You met him 40 years ago.
Yeah.
He is a really good coach.
I mean, I just like this team right now. I like the versatility on defense. I mean, they've got 5 guys that can play inside or outside right now. 6 guys. And the same thing with the offense. I mean, they're just what Kellen Moore gives them with the motion, with the versatility that they have in all the players they have that they can line up anywhere, is they're going to be unpredictable. I mean, their defenses are not going to be able to. Last year they knew what they were going to do. Towards the end, they just said, okay, let's just make sure they can't go deep to AJ Brown and Devontae Smith, then we're fine. We'll blitz the hell out of Jalen, and it worked. This year, I mean, it's still in Jalen's hands, but he's got everything around him offensively that they should be really good.
Yeah, the weapons. If I'm an opposing defensive coordinator and I'm game planning against the Eagles, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm like, you're going to try to do something, but there's too many weapons. If they handle things correctly, but I thought that was true before they got Jahan Dotson. Barring injuries, the depth was a concern. It was already that. So, yeah, I'll end it there with you from the perspective of the intangible thing that could destroy the season and destroyed last season, to be honest. Add P. Damo on the X platform. Make sure you follow Paul there. And that's these expectations. We're talking about this team. Oh, you can't stop this team. That's what people expect. And we all know, Damo, we've been around this sport for a long time. Usually things don't work out as perfectly as you think they are. Some things might work out, but some things aren't going to work out.
Yeah.
And everybody's going to get some adversity. And that was the whole kicker of last year. 10-1, the most miserable 10-1 team of all time. And they were miserable because they felt they left things on the field and they felt they weren't getting style points and they didn't feel good about their wins, which to me is crazy in a parity-driven league. You win, be happy about it. The expectations, are they even possible to live up to?
Yeah, I mean, their schedule allows them to develop in the first month and a half of the season. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how they do in these early games, because once they get to October, I mean, they've got a real challenge for about nearly 2 months, 5 games on the road in 7 weeks. Some really good teams that they're going to have to go on the road and play against. And there are going to be times, I think, during that stretch when we're going to be questioning, how good they are, because some of those games they're going to lose. But then, the schedule is kind of like last year in that they, at the end last year, they should have swept the table and didn't, because they were so bad and they were struggling so poorly. If this team develops the way they hope it will, they're going to get to those last 4 or 5 weeks of the season and they should be in pretty good shape. But, you're right. I mean, every year, no team in this league is going to go 15-2. It's just not going to happen. People were right to look at 10-1 last year and question it because, I know the win is the only thing that matters, but you saw after that why people were worried about that 10-1, the way they got there, because they were, it all came apart at the end. And, I think we saw some of those threads unraveling earlier than that. They were just managing to overcome it. Will that happen again? I don't think so. I think this offense is going to be, assuming the line can stay healthy, I think it's too good to have the problems they had down the stretch last year when they were only averaging 18 points a game. So, and I think Vic's going to do, we're not going to look at the same defense this year. We're going to be looking at a defense that's going to be something that offenses are going to have to worry about.
Yeah.
Good stuff, Paul Domowitch. Dom, I appreciate you being here, man. Great insight as always. Always good when something like this happens to get somebody that's been around the game for a long time give their insight. So we appreciate you being here today. It's always great having you on. We'll talk to you next week. All right, Damo?
Take care, guys.
Thanks, Damo.
There's Damo. Good stuff from him, Johnny Mac. I want to get to our next commercial break, and I want to come back. I do have a couple more things I want to kick around with you on this topic. Only 24 minutes until we get up our man Ed Kracz. Can't wait to talk to Eddie K from Sports Illustrated, who does his work with John McMullen over there. They both do a great job. So we'll get to our next commercial break. I want to thank everybody, by the way, in the chat. John, we have a great crowd today. We got a lot of great super chats. New member in there today. So, Ian, thank you for becoming a member. Any super chats you guys give, I will make sure that we read. They go right to the front, so we appreciate them. Segment with Johnny Mac and I coming up next. More on the Jahan Dotson trade. Stay tuned, everybody. Birds 365 will be right back.
Michael Vick at BetUS.com. Catch an incredible 125% sign-up bonus on your first 3 deposits, plus 10% gambler's insurance. BetUS, my online sportsbook and casino.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.
Is the best vacation one that you find or one you get lost in? One that takes you to new heights or reminds you to go with the flow? To get your feet wet and your wheels spinning? One that lets you find your own rhythm or get carried away? Find the best of yourself. Get lost in the woods. Plan your stay in the Wildwoods today.
Win and save this baseball season from Colony Pools and Power Washing, a local company serving Delaware, Delco, and Chester County since 1970. Are you tired of looking at your green house? Is your roof, siding, deck stained green from algae and mold? Let the experts pressure wash your home and take the pressure off of you. Win with Colony Pools and Power Washing. Call them now at 302-762-2250. That's 302-762-2250.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction. Go with trust.
Go Birds!
And go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Up. And go Birds.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome back in, everybody, to a Football Friday edition of Birds 365 after the Eagles make a trade and add to that already high-powered offense. A good Football Friday here. Didn't expect to be talking about this after training camp ended, Johnny Mack. You kind of think, okay, maybe a little lull period now. I know we had the preseason game tomorrow, the final preseason game, but Birds keep going. They make another move, so good stuff there. I want to thank everybody in the chat today. A great crowd. Make sure you guys smash that like button. I wanted to get to 150 yesterday to thank John for his hard work at training camp, doing 2 shows a day, going down to the NovaCare. So make sure you guys smash that like button for Johnny Mack. John, I got a question for you, but before I do that, I do want to hit Brian Fleming, who dropped a super chat. Brian, thank you, man. Your second super of the day. We appreciate it for sure. Brian says, on defense, guarding the middle of the field is still a concern like it was last year. These linebackers aren't great in coverage. We need Johnny's big nickel. John, what's your response to our man, Brian Fleming?
Well, you're going to see big nickel at times, no question about it. But as far as linebackers and coverage, look, I've started asking people, give me your favorite linebackers in coverage. There aren't a lot of them in the NFL, and most modern offenses are designed to get linebackers in space against playmakers. And that's everyone, even from the best, which would be Fred Warner on down. That's everybody. So that should be the new default setting for people. Like if you're expecting linebackers to cover people, whether it's, hopefully it's not too much man concepts, but even zone looks with man principles. Yeah, you got to readjust your thinking with that. You want smart zone players who can be in the right spot and make things a little bit more difficult for the offense. And then it's about the pass rush getting home and making the quarterback get rid of the football before he wants to and things like that. The problem is everybody would love to put an extra defensive back on the field, especially in third and long situations. Everybody would love to play with one linebacker and just a bunch of defensive backs because you want the coverage people out there. But you do have to at least worry about the run somewhat, and that's why you need linebackers and you need them to be in there, especially against teams that can run the football effectively. So, when you have physical defensive backs, Malcolm Jenkins would be the last one I would say the Eagles had, who can really hold up and run support. You can play a lot more big nickel or dime or however you want to label it and have that extra, essentially a defensive back playing linebacker. I don't know if the Eagles have that player. And B, maybe they will if Sidney Brown comes back and healthy and he keeps getting better at some stage. I don't know if they have that player. And the linebackers have been better than I expected. That doesn't mean they're going to be stars. That doesn't mean they can cover people in space. But, Nakobe specifically and Jeremiah Trotter Jr., and I'm not talking about week 1 with Trotter, but maybe midway through the season, they're both very instinctive players. And that's what I look for in linebackers, because that means they're going to be in the right spots. And that's what I want from linebackers when it comes to coverage.
Good response there to Brian Fleming. Brian, thanks for the super chat, man. Got one more super chat, Johnny Mac, a couple more super chats, actually. And James Carver, Johnny Mac, our man James Carver checks in. We haven't seen Carver in a little bit. I think he was dealing with some stuff. I reached out to him yesterday on Twitter. James, great to see you back, man. Hope you're doing well. Hope everything is all right with you. Jason A-Team John checks in. He said, this is funny. $10, Jason. Thank you, man. We appreciate the support of the channel. He says, there is a conspiracy that players who attend Devontae Smith's softball game gets traded to the Eagles. It has happened the last couple of years. John, what's your thoughts on that?
No, I don't think it's a conspiracy. I do think, look, it helps when players have relationships and like each other. And if there's an opportunity to go to a situation and play together.
It does seem a lot of these Eagle players are liked across the league. I will say that.
Well, yeah, that's part of it. Yeah, I mean, but these other teams have these types of things, celebrity softball games with their high profile players, and similar things go around. But, if you go tight end university, for instance, which is something George Kittle and Travis Kelce and Greg Olson put together years ago, that has gotten essentially all the tight ends in the league very close. Lane with offensive masterminds, anytime you have a relationship. But I think with the Eagles, it's more about the organization, to be honest. A lot of people want to play here. And A, they've been successful. But, B, they've created a pretty good environment for the players. And that's with, I would argue, I thought it would be, to be honest, once these new facilities started popping up around the NFL, you see some of these facilities. We got to go to Miami a couple of years ago. Their new facility is just believable. The two best are Dallas and Minnesota. If you see either of their facilities, it would blow your mind. The New York Jets have a tremendous facility, and the Eagles kind of have a small, outdated one. And I thought, this is going to be a problem at some point, because players are going to want to go to, where it's nice and they have this environment. It hasn't really, I was wrong on that. They don't really care. I mean, it's nice when they walk in to Eagan, Minnesota, or Frisco, Texas, wherever the heck, I think it's Frisco, and they see the facility. It does blow them away, but if you don't have the organization to back it up, it really doesn't matter that much. So I think the Eagles have created an environment where people want to play.
No doubt about it, John. I agree with that 100%. John, I do have another question about the Dotson trade, and we only have 13 minutes to get Ed up. So hit this super as quick as you can. All right, brother. Mike Kravik says, do you see DeJean playing safety? Mike, thanks for the super chat.
Ever? Yeah, maybe. In the short term, no, absolutely not. Has not taken one rep at safety. There's no plan for him to take a rep at safety. Now, I always say when you get down to 53, there was no plan, zero plan. I've talked to JAKIB Sports about this numerous times. Zero plan for Avonte Maddox to play safety as a rookie. He did because there were a boatload of injuries and Jim needed a safety. And he said, all right, who's best equipped at what I have at this moment to play safety? And he said Avonte Maddox. So might he play safety at some point due to attrition? Sure. But there's no plan for that right now at all.
Good stuff there, Johnny Mac. I don't think he will this year either. Mike, thanks for the super chat. Thanks to all of our super chats. You guys have been great today. Great crowd in here. We appreciate all the support and all the comments and all the opinions. You guys are great, and you make the show you're a big part of the show. So we appreciate you all for being here. Johnny Mac, question for you on the trade, man. Was it the right trade for this football team to make at this time?
Yeah, I'd like to trade. I've said it on the show numerous times. I said they're most likely the position they're going to go outside the organization to address is wide receiver, third wide receiver, and more than third wide receiver, the backup, potential backup. And this player can fit both. And it's a big upgrade. You were talking about piecemealing the third receiver job between Britt and Cubby. And I'm a little disappointed for Britton. I would have liked to have seen him get more of an opportunity as a receiver. Paris Campbell and Johnny Wilson, most likely. You were going to piecemeal it between those three players, depending on what you needed. And it's not awe-inspiring. And when it came to the potential scenario I've mentioned, the game or two missed by A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith, you just didn't have that player on the roster who could play 70 snaps at an acceptable level. I'm not talking about replacing them literally. When you lose a player like that, you have to persevere. They weren't in a position to persevere the way they would have liked. And now they are. Dotson can do that. So I think it makes a lot of sense from the Eagles' perspective. And I like the trade. It is a lot, as Damo mentioned. There's probably nobody else calling Adam Peterson offering a third round pick. And I know that's hard for a lot of people to understand, but that's the depreciation of the NFL. Nobody's knocking down your door saying, oh, he's the 16th pick in 2022. Yeah, nobody cares. They value those draft picks like crazy. So it was a bold move, but I think it was a good move for Howie.
No doubt about it. John, what's your thoughts on the whole defensive side of it, though, where, I know we talked about this wide receiver 3, and somebody ripped me yesterday in the chat, and I think they were right. I think it was a fair rip. He's like, you wanted a wide receiver 3 all off season, and then they go and get one, and now you're saying they should have addressed the defense. But I do wonder, and I understand the context too. I'm kind of speaking in a vacuum where you don't know what trades were available. You don't know if any defensive guys were available, for Howie to make a move on that. Because remember, he's probably not going to pay a defensive guy. So it would have to be a guy that has years left on his contract. But I just believe that improving the defense would overall help this football team get further than marginally improving an already stacked to the gills offense. Am I wrong for thinking that or having that line of thought?
Well, I from the team's perspective, I think they think they're better equipped on defense than most fans, and by that I mean, well, Reed would be the most notable. Like there was never any. Now I can say it. There was never any thought of bringing in Justin Simmons by the Philadelphia Eagles. That could have changed if somebody got hurt, CJ or Reed. But they weren't interested because they were happy with their starting safeties. I don't think the fan base would necessarily agree with that. At linebacker, I think things have, as we just discussed with Damo, I think they're actually pretty good from a depth standpoint. Still have questions about settling on the starters. But their worst position from a depth standpoint was wide receiver. It was their best position.
Yeah.
If you just talk about the two starters, but depth wise, you're not making a splash in late August to get a starter, a meaningful starter, other than the older veterans like Simmons, who aren't signing in the offseason and probably don't want to go to training camp and probably don't want to go through the offseason stuff. Other than that type of player, you're not trading for a star. So when you say upgrade the defense, where are they upgrading? Like they're not getting a better pass rusher than Bryce Huff. Bryce might bail, and they may have made the wrong decision, but they're not getting a better pass rusher than Bryce Huff on August 23rd. So my first question would be, all right, where are you looking for this massive improvement? And then B, is it even possible to get a massive improvement at this point? You can get a role player. That's what they got yesterday. And they improved the worst depth position on the team to now to the point where you got people saying they got the best three wide receivers in football as a group. They may not. And now you have a legitimate backup for AJ and Devontae in case something happens. Yeah, this was always the position that made the most sense to go outside the organization.
Good perspective there. I do think it's a good trade, but it is more of an insurance trade. There's a lot of people. Real quick, John, I know you don't like to do this. I'm going to make you do it though. Sorry. What kind of stat projections do you think he has on this football team? Like I had guys in the chat yesterday, and they're like talking about 600-700 yards. With AJ and Devontae still producing at a high level, and I'm like, Hurts isn't going to throw for 5,000 yards.
Yeah, I know.
There's only one football.
Who's coming?
And then, by the way, I got to the end of it, and I'm running through this whole thing yesterday, and I'm like, and you have to factor in Saquon Barkley. They didn't just trade for another wide receiver to hand the ball off 25 times a game, so they're going to be a pass-heavy offense. It's an interesting thing, but just back to the original question, what do you think his stat line will be here?
If you plays on 17 games, 40 catches. Hopefully you get to 500, somewhere in that range. But yeah, you're taking away from other people if you're trying to get the ball to Dotson here. So, we'll see. And that will shift. Is Dallas Goedert healthy? I think he's okay, but
right.
He was out there watching. Is Saquon going to be healthy? I think you got to get Kenny involved. I'm the only one, but that guy's had an unbelievable summer. And I think he's an underrated part of this team. And I think he's the most underrated football player on this team, to be honest. So they have a lot of talent. And how many times have we said that, Zander? Good problem to have.
Yeah.
Problem. Still a problem. They got to get Kellen Moore's got to get a lot of people involved. And not only that, he's got to succeed. And if he doesn't succeed, well, you talk about a guy under pressure. Nick Sirianni, people think he's under pressure. Talk about a guy he was out in Dallas, fair or not, probably unfair, but Mike McCarthy wanted to take over. He's got one season in Los Angeles. And if he's one and done here, all of a sudden you develop that reputation as a guy bouncing from spot to spot to spot. And you you fail to reach the expectations with this talent. He's under a lot of pressure.
No doubt, John, no doubt about it. We got one more super chat from our man, Brian. Brian, thank you, man. You've been great today. Appreciate your support of the channel. It doesn't go unnoticed. So thank you, Brian, for your support today. Brian says, totally agree, Johnny. On defense, we're basically relegated to the waiver wire on defense at this time. Yeah, that's the context of, like, it's easy to say should have traded for defense, but there's not really a guy out there probably on defense that you wouldn't have to pay, you know, that we could have gotten. So good take, Brian. John, what's your reaction?
Yeah, I mean, the one guy would have been Justin Simmons, and I know a lot of people wanted him, and maybe it would have been an upgrade over Reed Blankenship. I was just telling people the Eagles don't feel that way. So the Eagles made their decision at that, and they're comfortable with it, and we'll see if it works out. But in a weird way, they might have more depth on defense than offense. You know, I look at the depth on offense, and now tight end is a problem. Wide receiver was a problem before they made the move, because tight end's a problem because CJ Uzomah didn't work out. The offensive line, it's been kind of shaky, the backups.
Yeah,
some good spots, some, you know, long term you feel good about Trevor Keegan. You know,
yeah, it is interesting because when you say that, people would probably be like, John, what the hell are you talking about? But you're right. I mean, the offense is better. They have better
the offense
players.
is much better starters.
Yeah, but
much better
from a depth
perspective. Strict depth.
Yeah, everything on defense does kind of have depth. The safety has some depth. Remember, Sidney Brown still has to come back. Corners have obviously a ton of depth. The linebackers, we've talked about the 4 or 5 of them. Defensive tackles, there's 4 or 5 of them. Edge rushers, there's 4 or 5 of them. I mean, I definitely see what you're saying. It's harder to improve the defense because you need an impact player versus the offense. You can improve it by adding that depth like we talked about. And I think that's what makes this trade make more sense to me.
Yeah. Yeah, this is the position. I said it for weeks. This was the position that they were most likely to go outside the organization. And they did. You didn't want to start with Paris Campbell. I'm biased towards Britton Covey because I really like him. And I think he would do a good job if given the opportunity, and he's not going to get the opportunity. So I feel a little bit bad for him, but you know, this is better for the Philadelphia Eagles. You know, I got to stay objective as well. This is better for the Philadelphia Eagles. And it makes sense. It makes sense. This was a position they needed to fill.
No
and
doubt
they did.
Got Ed Kracz in the waiting room. Can't wait to talk to our man Ed, but I do going to have to hit this super chat from our man James Carver. Drops $50. Unbelievable, James. Good to have you back, man. We appreciate your support, and we missed you in the chat. Not for your supers. I'm not saying that in that type of way. You provide great content in the chat, and we missed your contributions as always. I do want to say to Dave and Austin, Zander, you're invited to the best barbecue in Central Texas, free of charge. Dave, I used to live in Houston, by the way. I spent 2 years of my life living in Houston. I think I would have liked Central Texas a little bit better than I liked Houston. So appreciate that, Dave. Thanks for being here. James Carver says, J-Mac, along lines of tweet week and a half, but also a Dotson benefit being it makes traveling almost impossible. Isn't that also a benefit of having Q and his abilities outside but inside, so that Q inside eliminates wide receiver 1s or 2 in slot advantage, i.e. Lamb? What do you think of that, Johnny Mac?
Oh, I got to reread that.
Yeah, it's a little confusing, James. James sometimes types like that. James is a smart guy, John. He's like a professor. He writes textbooks for a living.
He's smarter than me.
Yeah, he's a smart dude. So sometimes he writes in a way that's above my IQ level.
Well, I think he's talking about moving receivers inside,
right.
which, the Eagles are going to do that a lot more with A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. They were using specifically both, but specifically Devontae a lot in the slot in practice, and they're going to do that a lot. And Dotson's ability to play both inside, outside helps them do that. So if Britton's on the field, he's got to play in the slot pretty much. You can put him outside, but it's not going to affect the defense that much. So it does make them a little bit more well-rounded, and I think you're going to see a lot of AJ and Devontae in the slot to try to take advantage of matchups. As far as traveling, cornerbacks, that's really defensive coordinators. I know, talked to Jim Schwartz a lot about that over the years, and the fact that he would always bring up, you might have a guy who can travel, but you have to understand what impact that has on your other corners. Because if he's traveling, they're traveling. And by that, he means if he's following so-and-so all over the place, that means the other cornerbacks have to do something else that they're not comfortable with. So that's like a whole sort of chemistry thing with the defense more than the star receiver. Like, if you have a star cornerback and you want him against A.J. Brown, you love to do it, but sometimes you can't do it because the other guys, your other cornerbacks on defense can't hold up. You're muted, Zander.
James, thanks for being here, man. We appreciate that super chat, $50. That's big support to the channel, so we can't thank you enough. Over 500 watching on YouTube. Thanks everybody for being here. Make sure you guys smash that like button. We got Ed Kracz. I'm keeping Ed waiting too long. Ed, sorry for keeping you waiting, man. We'll be with you in just a second. Let's get to our commercial break. Before I do that, are you guys looking for a new sports book this football season? BetUS is the answer, and JAKIB Sports is proud to announce our new football partnership for the upcoming season. Right now, everybody receive a 125% sign-up bonus, up to $2,000 on your first 3 deposits. If it's good for former Birds quarterback Michael Vick, it's definitely good for JAKIB Sports. So go to betus.com.pa. The link is in the description, so make sure you guys go and click that. Thanks, everybody, for being here. We'll be back in 3 minutes with Ed Kracz on the other side.
Michael Vick at BetUS.com. Catch an incredible 125% sign-up bonus on your first 3 deposits, plus 10% gambler's insurance. BetUS, my online sportsbook and casino.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.
Is the best vacation one that you find, or one you get lost in? One that takes you to new heights, or reminds you to go with the flow? To get your feet wet and your wheels spinning? One that lets you find your own rhythm, or get carried away? Find the best of yourself. Get lost in the woods. Plan your stay in the Wildwoods today.
Win and save this baseball season from Colony Pools and Power Washing, a local company serving Delaware, Delco, and Chester County since 1970. Are you tired of looking at your green house? Is your roof, siding, deck stained green from algae and mold? Let the experts pressure wash your home and take the pressure off of you. Win with Colony Pools and Power Washing. Call them now at 302-762-2250. That's 302-762-2250.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction. Go with trust.
Go Birds!
And go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome back in, everybody, to Birds 365 Football Friday here on the channel. Joined now by Ed Kracz from SI.com. Ed, welcome to the show, man. How you doing on this Football Friday?
Hey, guys, I'm doing great. Do we have any breaking news to talk about from yesterday?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Happy Jahan Dotson Day. A lot of energy, a lot of Berman-like energy from Ed Kracz. I'm impressed this morning.
Yeah.
All right, let's give it. I don't want to spoil it. Let's hear Ed Kratz's take on the trade. Jahan Dotson to the Eagles.
Well, I really don't see any downside to it. They needed depth at the receiver spot after AJ and Devontae, and he brings some flexibility now, and he's better than anybody else that could have played that number 3. I mean, Covey, I'd like to have seen him get a shot at it.
Man, I'm disappointed for him.
Yeah,
really
but he's limited in that he can only play the slot. And
I think he could do it, though. I do.
You think he can play outside?
No, I think he'd be really good in the slot.
Yeah,
I think
I agree. But I think they want that flexibility, the versatility to have like a Dotson be able to go outside if you were to motion Smith or Brown into the slot. And I think we've seen Kellen do that a lot in camp. So as far as him giving you that flexibility and that versatility to go outside on occasion, Jahan Dotson does that. You got to question now the depth, after them, how many receivers you're taking, and we can get into that, and who you're going to keep, how many you're going to keep. But as far as liking the deal, I mean, I don't see any downside to it. You could say, well, they gave up a 3rd-round pick, and that's pretty steep. But they have 2, and the Eagles have had some big draft classes these past few years. They drafted 9 this year. I think it was 7 the year before. It was 9 3 years ago. So they've really done a good job bringing in, younger talent, controllable talent that helps, them pay some of the guys that need new contracts. They're bringing in this younger, cheaper labor. So, how many more guys do you need to take? I think they still have 7 picks.
Yeah.
In next year.
Well, and they had 4 7th-round picks, so you don't need 4. So you give up that's nothing.
So I don't have a problem giving up the draft pick at all. I know 3 is a little on the steep side, but hey, that's the cost of doing business. But as usual, there's always 2 sides of the story. Why did Washington give up on a guy they just drafted in the 1st round 2 years ago? We saw the Steelers do that with Kenny Pickett. Now the Eagles have 2 former number 1 picks on their roster.
They're getting that whole. They have the whole 2022 draft class. They're trying to get it all.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's bizarre. And they have Saquon Barkley, another 1st-round pick for another team. I mean, you have to give Howie a lot of credit. I think unless you're getting Brandon Ayuk at this stage of summer, I think Jahan Dotson's
not. But I think people would want that. But come on. At some point, there's one football comes into it. Brandon's really good.
I love the deal. Bottom line, I love the trade.
Yeah.
Yeah, what kind of impact do you think he has on the offense from like a playmaking standpoint? I know he's great depth. I think he kind of opens it up to allow Kellen to move AJ and Devontae around, which I think is a good thing. But what kind of impact do you think he has on the offense?
Yeah, I mean, listen, this guy caught 11 touchdowns in 29 games. I mean, that's pretty good production for a receiver. Is he going to catch 5 touchdown passes this year for the Eagles? I'd be surprised if he does that. But listen, 17 games is a long season. You never know what could happen to Smith or Brown if they were to, get a nick or a bruise that would cost them a game or two. Maybe his production will increase. But, we haven't seen a lot of I guess, traffic for the third wide receivers in years past. Zach Pascal didn't catch many passes. Olamide Zacchaeus didn't really have that big of an impact. And, of course, Quez Watkins, he was fast, but he had a hard time catching the ball. Jahan Dotson's fast, but he can catch the ball. I think there'll be some traffic for him, especially the way Kellen Moore's offense is going to look. I think he's going to run on and off the field, and he's going to give the defenses different looks from week to week. And I think Dotson will be part of some packages going forward. So, is it going to be a high volume number? I don't know. Probably not. Maybe 30, 35, 40 catches, somewhere in that range for maybe 400 yards. It's so early to say. I mean, he's not even in town yet, as far as I know. We haven't talked to him. He's got to get up to speed. The Eagles open the season in 2 weeks in Brazil. Is he going to be ready to play a role then? We're going to have to wait and see.
You mentioned the why. That's something I always look at. Like, why is Washington giving up on the 16th overall pick in the 2022 draft with 2 years left on this deal? If you think about it, that's earlier than the Eagles gave up on Jalen Reagor. And he had a lot more production. Now, first off, the guys in place now in Washington, Adam Peters, Dan Quinn, Cliff Kingsbury, had nothing to do with drafting Jahan Dotson. They're in a rebuilding situation. So the draft pick is probably more important to them. But they also did it in the division. If you're Adam Peters, Ed, the last thing you want is Jahan Dotson beating you in a game as a GM. You're trading him to your in-division rival. So any concern there that Washington is giving up on this guy so quickly?
Well, we see interdivision trades all the time. Well, the Eagles and Commanders made a deal during the draft. The Eagles traded up with the Commanders to get Cooper DeJean, and they gave up 2 picks that the Commanders turned into Mike Stanistrill, the cornerback from Michigan, and their tight end, Ben Sinnott, who I think is going to be a really good player as he learns from Zach Ertz. So you see these moves all the time. You can go back to, 2010 when the Eagles traded Donovan McNabb to Washington. Yeah. The Eagles have traded.
That's the one that draft picks. Yeah. I mean, draft picks. If you go back to the Devontae Smith draft, that was like Dallas Giants, Eagles, all wrangling right after each other. It happens quite a bit in the draft, but player for player. And I go back to different Donovan's at the end of his career, but I'm glad you brought that up because I hadn't talked about it. The Eagles kind of knew, all right, Donovan was shot at that point, and I'm sure Washington was thrilled to pick him up, and there was nothing left. Point I'm trying to make there is the Eagles knew better than anybody else where Donovan McNabb was. In theory, the Commanders, much younger players, so different from that standpoint, but in theory, they know Jahan Dotson better than anybody else, and they decided to make the decision. Just a little bit cause for pause, isn't it?
I absolutely, I think so. And you mentioned the new regime. Maybe that plays a part of it. I saw that you wrote a story on SI.com, I think last night or yesterday, about a source of yours saying that he was kind of mopey.
It was kind of cruel. But it's interesting because you can tell. I also this morning, Ed, I saw the Washington Post and their sort of explanation for the trade. You can tell they're getting the same information the people down in Washington, and this is how the Post described it: inability to play through contact, bad fit for the vertical passing scheme run by Cliff Kingsbury. He's fluid and fast, but not sudden or strong, is what one scout told the Washington Post. So,
yeah, I mean, listen, he's got a little body of work, and he just didn't fit the Commander's scheme. How different will the Eagles' scheme be for him? How will he approach the scheme? Maybe he won't be as mopey, or maybe he'll be a little more physical. Him and AJ Brown are really good friends. They work out all together in the off season, and being with AJ and the way AJ works, maybe that rubs off on Dotson. Maybe he comes into this culture, which is vastly different, I'm sure, than Washington's was when he was drafted. Snyder was still the owner. They were through some turmoil. maybe he wasn't real happy. So listen, I think he can run good routes. I think that's another thing about him. I think he runs precise routes like Devontae Smith. And we'll see about the physicality stuff if he's able to work through that. I think he can get open. I mean, listen, he caught 500 plus yards 2 years ago. He had over, I think, 400 last year. So whatever the limitations are, it's not like he's not putting numbers on the board.
Yeah. And by the way, even the people that criticized him said he was a good route runner. And they said, but he's a good route runner. So everybody kind of agreed on that. So that's part of, look, he's got talent. I mean, he's the 16th pick in the draft. And
he's got a contract that is team friendly. It's team friendly. He's still under control for 2 more years, and then the Eagles have a team option for a 3rd year if they wish to keep him. So, he's going to be able to grow inside this offense. Now, how long this offense stays in place with Kellen Moore, who knows? He may be hired to be a head coach after the season if the Eagles have the kind of success that everybody thinks they will. But still, he's still, in Philadelphia for 2 years. He's going to be teammates with A.J. Brown, Saquon Barkley. I think they missed each other by a year at Penn State, but they're still close friends. So, he's coming into an environment that he can't, it's going to suit him just fine because of who he knows on the team. Couple other Penn State players on the team, mind you. A shout out to Jeff.
Oh, boy, Jeff Kerr's excited. We're talking, Jeff.
I thought about that immediately. I'm like, Jeff Kerr.
Yeah, but it's 4 guys now from Penn State, right? Now, I don't know if Brandon Smith, the linebacker, will be on this team, after next week, or PJ Mustipher, he's the other Penn State guy. Yeah. But everybody talks about Georgia and Alabama, and they lead the way with 6 guys each on the roster currently.
Speaking of Brandon Smith, Brandon Lee Gouton was on the show. He had a good category. I want to throw at you, Ed. That just reminded me. Best Eagles player who's not going to make the football team. Now, BLG went Brandon Smith, who you just mentioned, Penn State linebacker. I think he has splashed. Was out a little bit with what did Brandon have? He had a concussion that took him out for a little bit.
Yeah.
I went Perry Nickerson, the slot corner. Who would Ed Kracz go? Not going to make the team. The best player is not going to make the team.
Well, listen, I think Vic Fangio could have some surprises with some of the keeps that he's going to lobby Howie Roseman for. I think there's going to be, 1 or 2 surprises that, Vic is going to want to keep, and Howie's going to probably let him keep them. So I'll throw a name out there, but I think they might keep this guy. I like Julian Aquara. I think he has, answered every single practice. He's been there. He's shown flashes to me, rushing the passer. He's shown them to me in pass coverage. I know Howie Roseman, when they signed him to that futures contract back in whenever it was, January or so, Howie alluded to some of the guys they signed, and he was one of the guys that he mentioned as someone they're really happy with, him and Darian Kennard, the offensive lineman. So I think Julian Aquara is a guy that could be kind of a surprise cut, or the best player that the Eagles could cut. But again, I'm not so sure you won't see them keep him. I don't know how, but
it's a good pick. It's a good pick. I like it. By the way, the Eagles just posted Jahan Dotson arriving at the NovaCare complex. So he is here.
What are we doing here? Why aren't we down in South Philly, baby? We should be there.
You think he'll be available to you guys today?
No.
I don't know how quick the turnaround is normally with these guys.
Not quick.
Well, Ed, everybody's talking about offense. I mean, we've been talking about the $175 million offense still on blue in the face for the last 4 months. They added another piece. What about the defense, Ed? Is this defense good enough for a team that wants to compete for a Super Bowl in 2024?
I don't know. Not yet. But again, here we are in August. I think it's going to be kind of an evolving process for this defense. And, you want to be playing your best football probably after Thanksgiving. You want to kind of stay in the hunt until the holiday. And you hope by then the defense will be clicking. Vic Fangio will have it all sorted. But I like the versatility and the flexibility that Fangio is showing us. He's shown a lot of blitzing from the linebackers. I think he has the personnel to do it. Their defensive tackle group, I think, is pretty good. I think it's coming along. I like Thomas Booker. His name's been thrown out there. He could be a guy they keep. But Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis, those are the linchpins of this defense. They're the ones that are going to have to carry this team, and they're going to have to play 60% of the snaps at minimum, I think, for that defensive front. I think they're deep.
Certainly Carter's got to be over that, I would argue.
Yeah, and Carter, listen, that guy's he's good. He's done a lot of good things in camp, as good as you can for a defensive tackle. You can't really sack quarterbacks, but he's been in the backfield an awful lot. But yeah, I think their linebackers are pretty good. Who's going to start? We don't really know. We think we know. Devin White and Zach Bond have gotten the majority of first team reps there, so it'll probably be those two. But I like Trotter, how he's progressed. I like Ben Van Sumeren has done some good things. Obviously, Nakobe Dean, terrific camp. So I like their linebackers. Safety maybe a little light. If something happens there, Avonte Maddox is probably your first guy to go onto that back line. And then maybe James Bradbury. I think they're going to keep him. I really do. And until Sidney Brown gets back. I'm not sure Sidney's going to start the season on the active roster. He'll probably be on the PUP list. Probably miss the first couple weeks of the season. You hope that they can kind of get through that, until he gets back. You hope he can get through that at safety. But they're deep at corner. So I like the defense. I mean, I think, maybe not right now, they're a Super Bowl type defense, but I think they can be. I think Vic Fangio is a terrific coach, that he's going to play to his players' strengths. He's not afraid to, mix and match personnel groupings. I think it's going to be exciting, but I think it's going to be a growing process for this defense. And you hope that by the holiday, by Thanksgiving, they're up to speed and they're ready to make a push for the Super Bowl.
No doubt. Ed, you think Bond's going to get that start at linebacker? Here on Birds 365, I listen to my man John McMullen. He tells me Vic Fangio, the conspiracy, he's waiting for you guys to leave the room before he puts his true start.
I have too much respect for Vic to say that he does not realize that Nakobe Dean is his best linebacker. Ultimately,
maybe
he's going to be on the field week 1. That's my belief.
Yeah, I think he'll be on the field. Is he going to start? I don't know. How many snaps is he going to
play? And by the way, when I say that, because BLG brought that up yesterday, it's a good point. He's going to play the most reps. I think we all start back in the day. I'm a big basketball guy, used to be a big Sixers guy, not anymore. Mark Ibaroni started on the Sixers championship. Bobby Jones played the most minutes, Hall of Famer. And he finished. It's more important than one who started, who finishes. Yeah. And the case up here is it's not who starts, it's who plays the most reps. And that last practice, Ed, I started counting. Nakobe was on the field for the most reps, first team. I think that's where we're going.
Yeah, well, listen, you want to be careful with him, too. It's the same with Saquon. When we first had Kellen Moore, he said, we have to be careful with the number of snaps that Saquon takes. We want to get him through 17 games. And, I think you could say the same with Nakobe. He had the foot surgery. He's been banged up. He had the shoulder questions coming out of the draft. He's had a lot of wear and tear on that body when he was at the University of Georgia. So I think you might see them try to monitor his snaps. I'm not sure he's going to be out there for 95% of the snaps. I don't see that, especially early on in the season. They want him to play 17 games, and I think the best way to do that is to kind of monitor his snaps. Maybe he plays 50% of them or even less than that, and you throw Bond and White out there. But, yeah, there's no question that Fangio probably loves Nakobe Dean, but he's probably also very aware that the guy has had an injury history, and we have to get him through 17 games, so we can't play him as many snaps as we might like.
I want to bring up 2 players who I think should make the team, and I want to hear Ed Kracz. Will they make the team? One is Patrick Johnson, and the other Tristan McCullum.
Tristan McCullum. Boy, they're good questions. I think Patrick Johnson makes the team, and again, I think that's probably over Julian Aquara. I think they play the same position, but I think Patrick Johnson probably gets the nod there. Hey, he made a play in game one. You can't overlook that. I think he's had some good reps at camp. But I think Aquara has too, but they love Patrick Johnson. This will be his 4th year on the team.
Good special teams player as well.
Right, yeah, good special teams player. So I think Patrick Johnson is on the team. Tristan McCollum, man, that's a tough one. I guess it depends with Bradbury. And that's the problem when you say, okay, we're going to keep James Bradbury. We're not going to trade him. We're not going to cut him. Is now you're looking at, guys like Tristan McCollum. Are they going to keep 5 safeties until Brown's healthy? And roll the dice with Bradbury? I think McCollum deserves a spot on this team, but I'm not sure there's room for him if they go with 4 safeties, which probably is what they'll do. And it's going to come down to him or Bradbury, I would imagine. But as of now, I don't think Tristan McCollum makes the team, and that's going to be trouble for the Eagles, because I think someone would pick him up if they try to, eventually get him to the practice squad.
Ed, training camp's officially in the books, man. It's crazy. It came and went. At least it did for me. I know maybe it didn't for you and Johnny.
It was a grind for us, man.
Working hard, going down there every day. John doing multiple shows a day, multiple columns. He was appreciate you guys and the work you guys do, because you really give us some good insight into the football team. What other key takeaways that we haven't hit on that did you have from camp? Do you feel, not you're more of an objective guy as a reporter, but you feel better about this team after camp, worse about this team? Anything stick out to you that swayed you one way or the other after seeing 16 training camp practices?
Other than the fact that John McMullen is probably the most under the radar, hardest working man in the business.
True, Ed. You're 100% right.
Yep. And he loves it. That's the thing. He brings the passion with it. But, things that stick out. I mean, I'm a little concerned about the offensive line, to be honest with you. Mekhi Becton, to me, I had this big crush on him in the spring. I thought, man, that guy, you got to get him on the field. But then you see him in camp, and he's quick to leave the field with whatever nagging injury he has causing concern. He limps off at one practice early, doesn't come back the rest of the day. But then you see him out there the next day. Now, I talked to him, I think it was the last day of camp on Wednesday, and, he said it's just general soreness that he's battling through. But I wonder if he's going to be the guy that's going to play all 17 games on this line. I think you need to have a good backup for Mekhi Becton. And you wonder, okay, Tyler Steen, we haven't seen him since he was carted off against the Patriots. He hasn't even been out of practice that I've seen. I don't know, maybe John, you saw him, but
no, he hasn't.
Yeah, my concern with Tyler Steen is he's got more of a serious injury than we're thinking about. I think it could be more of a foot type injury, maybe a Lisfranc type of situation with Tyler Steen. You got to hope that he can, over these next 2 weeks before they go to Brazil, get healthy, but we'll see. So Mekhi Becton, to me, is another thing I don't like with him is he comes off the field and he gets down to one knee right away. Like, I wonder about his conditioning. The rest of the offensive line is, moving around, both, they're up, they're on 2 feet. Becton's taking a knee as soon as he leaves the field. So, I wonder about his stamina. First of all, I wonder about his ability to stay healthy. You don't want him limping off after, 10 plays of a game, and then you have to go with a backup right out of the chute. So
he doesn't have that Landon Dickerson toughness.
Boy, I'll tell you, he's limping around. He got his toe stepped on in one practice, but he's still out there playing. I mean, it's amazing.
That's what I mean.
So tough.
That's why you bringing that up about Becton kind of alarming to me. It's like, it's one thing if he has an serious injury, but he leaves and then he comes back the next day.
Yeah, and by the way, under the radar guy is going to make the team because of what Ed's talking about. Nick Gates, I believe, is going to make this football team.
Yeah,
because he's got a lot of experience. He's been better than Max Sharping and Matt Hennessy, the other veterans they brought in. He's always got his belly out. Love that for an offensive lineman, showing off the belly. I think he's going to make the football team. And part of that is what, but that I'll wrap it up there with you at Kracz E. Make sure you follow Ed on the X platform. Read them at si.com/NFL/Eagles. Philadelphia Eagles on SI is the new branding we have. Does a tremendous job there. I said this earlier, and I want to get your take. Obviously, the Eagles offense, it's an all-star team all over the place. We know how good the starters are. Defensively, rebuilding unit. However, I think the Eagles are deeper on defense than they are on offense. So take the starters out of the equation. I think they're deeper on defense than offense. Agree or disagree?
Yeah, I would probably agree with that. Again, the depth on that offensive line to me is a bit of a concern. I don't know how good it is. So right there, I think that gives the defense, the edge. I like the versatility that these defensive players have. You can line Jalen Carter up outside if you want to take advantage of his quickness. You can play Quinyon Mitchell in the slot or outside on the corner. You have safeties that can play slot like Avonte Maddox. I think the linebacker depth is good. We talked about that. Not sure about the edge. I don't know how deep they are on the outside there after Sweat and Huff and, maybe
you got BG can still play. Alex Hunt's better than I thought it was going to be. Developmental. Nolan Smith. I don't know about Nolan, but
right. I don't either. But
and then Patrick Johnson.
I think Patrick could be good in a small role.
Yeah, I agree. So, I think depth-wise, sure, I would agree that they're deeper on defense than they are offense. Jahan Dotson certainly changes the depth perception on that offense.
They have Kenny Gainwell, I think, I think is the most underrated player on this team. They have good depth at running back.
Will Shipley has done some nice things as a
he surprised me. He impressed me a bit through camp. Ed.
Yeah. But, I think what can slow this team down, obviously injuries, you can say that about every team. If you get hurt at a key spot, then you're in trouble more times than not. It's just the burden of expectation. And I wrote about this with Quinyon Mitchell and first-round picks and that burden that they face of carrying that first-round torch. Brandon Graham's story is well chronicled. He had the bust label for a couple years, shed that. Jordan Davis, this is a big year for him, year 3. He's kind of right on that line, I think, between not being a bust, but not being, living up to that first-round pick that the Eagles spent on him. That's why I thought, when they gave the coach of the year to Brian Daboll a couple years ago and the Eagles went to the Super Bowl, I kind of railed against it. Everybody said, well, Sirianni has this great team that Howie Roseman gave him. But listen, you still got to get this great team to play together, to accept their roles. And that's hard to do. We'll see if Sirianni can do that in this new CEO role that he has carved out for himself. But I think the burden of expectation can really weigh on a team, as they start the season, especially. And this is not an easy start for the Eagles. They play 5 of their first 7 games away from Lincoln Financial Field. They're not home. They don't have an extended home stretch until November 3rd, which is absurd. So, you hope that, listen, this defense can, kind of evolve and become what we think it can be. And you hope that the burden of expectation doesn't weigh on this team and that it impacts their ability to execute on the field.
No doubt about it, Ed. Great insights today, as always, man. We appreciate having you on the program. You're one of the best covering this football team. We'll be reading your work at si.com. Great job in training camp, Ed. Get some rest, man. I thought you guys were going to get some rest after training camp, and Howie's like, nope, let's get a trade done.
By the way, we haven't even talked about the game. There's a game tomorrow.
I know. It's like I forgot the game was tomorrow.
Eagles-Vikings, which nobody's playing in, so you might as well forget it. But Ed and I have to go to that.
That's football. I like watching football. I don't care who's out there playing. It'd be fun to see Julian
Aaron Hall versus Will Greer.
Ed. I love it.
Yeah, it's cool, man. So thanks, Zander. I appreciate you saying that.
Ed, appreciate it, man. We'll talk to you soon. All right, brother.
All right, guys. See ya.
Thanks, Ed.
Ed Kracz joining us. Great stuff from Ed Kracz. I love that.
Yeah, we haven't talked the game at all.
We didn't even touch it, John. We didn't even mention the preseason game tomorrow. We only have 4 minutes left here on the show, and I got to get them our man James Carver. John, he dropped us another $20. He said address it after Ed. I'm going to address it here after Ed. He wanted to follow up, so he drops in 2 super chats today. James, thank you, man. Thank you for your support. He says, to clarify and can address it after Ed, effectively CB1s won't be able to travel with AJ because then that puts a CB3 on Dotson or Smitty. But Q makes travels by Eagles not needed with Q because we have 3 legit CB1s for most teams. I think he's drawing comparisons to how it's going to be hard to cover the 3 Eagles receivers.
Yeah, from a defensive perspective, and that's why I brought up Jim. I think people don't. It has more to do with their confidence in their talent. In other words, like if you have one of the top tier corners, you might not travel because you don't have confidence in your second and or third guy because they have to travel if they're traveling. So it has more to do. It doesn't have to do with the receivers on the other side as much as your confidence in your own guys. So if you have Sauce Gardner, like the Jets have good corners. So the Jets are pretty confident that they can do whatever they want. And they're not going to be deterred by the opposition, whether it's AJ, Devontae, Dotson, Tyreek Hill, Waddle, whoever the third wide receiver is down there, Jefferson, Addison, what they're doing with Jalen Naylor. It has to do more with the corners, and if the defensive coordinator or the head coach in the case of the Jets has confidence in those other guys, and then the receivers on the other side. That's generally what it has to do with.
Good stuff.
That makes sense. Does that make sense?
It does. It does make sense. Good stuff there. Good. James, thank you for the support, man. We appreciate it as always. Thanks everybody, by the way, for the support, John. We had great numbers today. We had great support from all of our people. We have 175 likes. Look at that, everybody. Thank you all for liking, man. It means a lot to us. We work hard and we appreciate that. You guys listen to us. We could be talking into a void, but we don't. We talk to you guys, and we appreciate that. John, I guess we only got 60 seconds or so to go. I guess we got to hit this game a little bit, John. What's the expectation going into the game tomorrow, man?
Yeah, nobody's playing. I mean, that's what the Eagles did on Wednesday, and they actually shifted from. They were originally going to practice on Wednesday and Thursday. They scaled it back because they essentially had a inter squad scrimmage to try to replicate a joint practice that they didn't have and get a ton of reps for the key players. So, and they also wanted to go walk through Thursday, Friday to get the legs back of the players that that are going to play, the younger players. And, Minnesota was honest. They've already admitted they're not playing their starting quarterback, which is Sam Darnold, or their backup, which is Nick Mullins, our old friend who was here. Nick Mullins is the backup. Now they lost J.J. McCarthy. So in theory, they're down to their fourth quarterback, which will be Jaron Hall. He's going to start the game. They've already been honest about that. You're going to see a lot of Jaron Hall and Tanner McKee. And it's football, I guess.
Is Will Greer going to get out there, you think? They haven't played him.
I do think Will Greer is going to get out there.
Yeah.
And so is Matt Corral, who the Vikings just signed.
Oh, good.
The old Miss quarterback who I think
I don't know if anybody remembers in our chat. We used to have a guy, John, before Matt Corral got drafted, that was every day he would drop 50 to 100 comments. Matt Corral, draft Matt Corral, draft Matt Corral. I don't know. The guy disappeared after that draft. I don't know where he went. If he's still, maybe he changed his name or whatever. I don't know if anybody in the chat remembers that.
No, he's a legendary. I think he's in the Birmingham Stallions Ring of Honor. That's where he's been. I'm joking. He was the 3rd round pick, I think, Matt Corral.
Yeah, he was. Some projected him to go 1st round that year. I remember that.
He was a really good college quarterback at Ole Miss, but got some size issues. And even the SEC is not the NFL. And it's a whole different ball game. He did win, as I said, he won what is it? UFL, I guess now. UFL championship with the Birmingham Stallions.
Nice.
And now he's trying to beat out Jaron Hall to be the interesting note, which I mentioned on Twitter. Jaron Hall's a very good friend of Britton Covey, and they work out together in the offseason. Both Utah guys. With Puka Nacua as well.
Good stuff, Johnny Mac. We're going to wrap up here. Went a little bit overtime. I want to thank everybody for being here today. And John, I have one question on the way out, and it came from one of our chatters. I believe it was you, Slagger. I'm not going to be able to get to the chat. It was thousands of chats ago. I will not be able to find it, but I do want to ask you the question because I think Slagger brought up a good question earlier in the show. By the way, 189 likes. Can we get to 200? Appreciate everybody. Slagger asked John, he said earlier, and I'm paraphrasing because I don't have the chat in front of me, but he said, you know, John used to talk about the drop from wide receiver 2 to 3 as a just for the sake of the conversation, a Grand Canyon size drop off. How much did they close that gap with the acquisition of Jahan?
Oh, a lot. Yeah, they got a lot better. This is a legitimate NFL player who, again, the goal is not to replace AJ or Devontae if they get hurt for a week or two. The goal is to persevere and be able to win a football game, maybe in a little bit of a different fashion, but you still need somebody to play 70 snaps at receiver outside and move around in case Kellen's going to move people around. But he can do that, and they're better equipped. They didn't. I've said pretty consistently before this trade, they didn't have that player on the roster. Now they do, and that's an improvement. I think it's a significant improvement because I think the depth was a serious issue before this trade.
Season ending if we lost one of those guys, and I think they did give you a little bit of insurance on that. But we'll see what he's able to do. John, great show today. Thanks to both of our guests, Paul Domowitch and Ed Kracz. I love talking to Ed, John. I always say that, but I do love talking to him. He's really great to talk to. Does a great job in this role. Thanks, everybody. 197 likes, man. You guys absolutely crushed it. We'll probably get there before the music ends, but we are going to get out of here a little bit overtime. Johnny Mac, great work today, man. We'll talk to you tomorrow with the preseason game, man. We're going to do a little football 24/7 after that sucker. Talk some Nick Gates, talk some Will Greer, talk all sorts of back end of the roster guys. So a lot of fun there. John, great show today, man. Great job covering this training camp. Great breakdown of the trade. Good stuff all around, Johnny Mac. Thank you, brother.
All right. Happy Friday, everybody. Thanks for listening.
200 likes. We just hit it. Happy Friday, as Johnny Mac mentioned. Thank you all in the chat. Couldn't do it without you guys. We appreciate you so much. Catch you later on in the channel. National Football Show with Dan Cilio coming up 2 to 6. And then the preseason finale tomorrow on JAKIB Sports. We'll be covering that as well. Thanks, everybody. We'll catch you next time here on Birds 365.
You've been listening to Birds 365, the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate, inside the locker room, and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.